What up, people? It's your boy, Master Chudy, out here with another video this morning. Once again, I hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are keeping safe in this time. And I just thought I would, come up with a video. So I actually tried this last night, but there's some things wrong with my video, so I deleted it and decided to move forward. But this article came out yesterday, and it annoyed me greatly. Our fascination with Canon is killing the way we value stories by James Whitbrook here. And I went on a very long rant on why it's wrong, but I think I can streamline what I said. But I will start off with my view that Canon does not kill the way we value stories. In fact, Canon is the perfect way on how we value stories and how we can make good stories to fit into a world that has been created. This author seems to get it, but wants to move forward to saying, no, Canon is terrible. So let's go. So the author basically comes with the premise. As the pop culture we love becomes increasingly dominated by vast franchises of interconnected worlds and stories, so does it become dominated by one singular question from diehard fans. Is the thing we're about to consume canon to everything we've consumed before? It's an attitude that's turning our love of stories into bizarre archival competition. No. Let's hit just this first paragraph. No. It doesn't. When we ask if something is canon, we want to make sure that it makes sense to the story that's being told. Storytelling has evolved in a way that things have to make sense. Things need to make sense. We look at Star Wars, and we can see the results of that. Putting the Force aside, the Holdo maneuver in The Last Jedi makes no sense from a realistic standpoint, let alone a story standpoint. It broke what was essentially decades worth of space battles that were now deemed like almost pointless if people could do that. And then we get into the aspects of the Force, with Force ghosts now interacting with the real world when that wasn't the case. It begs into question, why didn't Obi-Wan decide to help fight Vader? Why didn't Yoda decide to help if they had that much power, as showcased in The Last Jedi? And then The Rise of Skywalker, as you know, not so much red canon, but only seemed to had to make the impossible task of retconning the retcons that The Last Jedi was doing in its movie. It's sad, really. It really is. Now, the author goes on to say in the second paragraph, which is like, yeah, canon is not inherently a bad thing, of course. It provides structure to chaos. Glad you agree. It does. And it can provide a sense of not just continuity, but the stakes as that continuity progresses. Wonderful. Because that's what happens. Basically, that's what happens. We see with The Last Jedi, you threw out the stakes. That means that all the stakes that were in previous Star Wars makes no sense anymore. If they could easily handle a thing and one person was ready to die for the cause, that's the issue. There are plenty of deaths in space battles where the good guys stayed on the ship and all of the crew died and with all the stakes. But now we realize that you could program droids to do kamikaze attacks. If this is true. And, there's, as he said, the idea that characters bear the impact of the events on their journeys across not just one narrative, but many, allowing them to grow and change to the point that they might even be different kinds of people compared to when we first met them. Wonderful. Your second paragraph basically wrecked your argument of why canon is killing the way we value stories. You've just basically said that canon essentially makes the story. But let's continue and see what he has to say. It's like there's still plenty of room for variety interpretation in relatively strictly defined canon. Look at Star Wars and those kind of stories. It can still tell, despite the mandate from upon high that anything told must fit into what's been established since Disney took over the franchise. You once again continue to devalue your argument. Yes, before Disney took over, we had the expanded universe that told great stories, added new abilities in the context of the canon. Granted, some of them might have been fantastical, like Force Storm with Palpatine and maybe other aspects of the Force in the EU, but the EU told great stories. The Old Republic stories, the Plagueis novel, the Thrawn anthology, Shatterpoint, the stories about Jason Solo, Mara Jade, Luke's Jedi Temple after the fall of the Empire. We got new stories that improved the stories that people loved. And people thought it was canon because it was well constructed, it made sense, and people were engaged. But now that Disney's taken over, they decide to say, you know what? Let's wipe and streamline the canon clean. And granted, they made some good novels along the way, like Dark Disciple and the Ahsoka novel, no doubt. But they're now relying on novels and comics and visual dictionaries to explain the utter destruction of the canon that they destroyed, that they created. It makes no sense. It's terrible. So, but those stories benefit from the added weight of being definitive interpretations and events that flesh out the entire galaxy's worth of story. This is the 2 paragraphs now that you are that you are destroying your argument. And it's like, but where canon, or rather our hunger for it, goes terribly wrong is when whether something matters or not becomes the base standard for what we consider a piece of media. Let me tell you something. When people on here critique media, they do not immediately say, well, if it's canon, we like it, and whether it's not canon, we don't like it. There have been plenty of things that have been canon in Star Wars where people don't like the story. And people can say, yeah, it makes sense in the canon, but it's just not a well told story. The same thing with if something is not canon, people can like it. Now, comics is a different beast because, things have been retconned and re-put back into the lexicon because of, events, though. Like, for example, DC, Flashpoint, New 52, and Rebirth, even Rebirth is kind of like bringing back what was past pre-New 52 kind of back in it in a way. But the New 52 was rebooted, and it stated that this is the new canon. Even it stated that this is an event that's going to change the trajectory of the canon. So it was something new. Now, people didn't like it. Some people did like it. But it wasn't that, oh, we're going to do all of this within one canon and then reckon and this is it without a proper explanation. At least Flashpoint was the explanation of why everything's different now. Okay? And even then, it kept some core aspects of what made its canon in DC. Marvel, they went the route of, you know what, we're not going to reboot our 616 universe, but we'll add another universe that's well known, the Ultimate Universe. And some people liked that, some people didn't, but it didn't wreck its mainline canon. And that's what the author fails to understand, that when somebody wants to critique media, they don't automatically think of canon. They think, oh, do I like it from a visual, storytelling, or any other aspect? So this author is confusing me. It's an attitude that has become predominant, not just within fandom circles. Now, this is the main crux. It's the fandom. But in the media commentary that has developed around these fandoms and the blockbuster franchises that dominate our popular culture. Let me give you an example. Fandoms for so many of these franchises have existed before they became commercial successes. Okay? I listen to Neurotic. I listen to Clownfish TV. They talk about Doctor Who. And before Doctor Who became really resurged, or it became something more than just its UK-based audience, which I think it was. Somebody explained to me. Even people here were really following it and became fans of the show before it really blew up. And you can see what's happened now, where this latest season has apparently wrecked any type of canon and continuity and retconned a bunch, which people are not pleased with. Mm-hmm. Critics and fans alike are now less interested in actually interpreting a piece of media thematically or to engage with why they liked or disliked it, but instead pick it apart, break it down to the base components of what they are. Essentially, it's pure unflinching facts. This is false, all right? All the critiques I've heard about Doctor Who, about the new Star Trek series of Discovery and Picard, The Last Jedi, The rise of Skywalker, any type of piece of media has never been, oh, we hate it because certain aspects are this, that, because they don't fit with the canon. That is false. It's always been about what you're saying. The themes are terrible. The characters are not good. The we don't feel good about it. You think that they don't that people who are interested in canon don't engage on those exact same things? No. If you were to hate something because it's simply canon or not canon, then you're not doing that. And but clearly it is. Now clearly that's not the case anymore. Google Star Wars or Marvel movies and you will see many articles and videos with the headlines X confirms Y canon, X questions answered by X things we learned about the character Z in this new book or movie. Now, as you will, critical essays about these stories, if not more. Now, here's where I will provide some sort of understanding with the author. But this again, these questions have nothing really to do with canon per se. It's all about how should I say micromanaging or micro-examining every little aspect, looking at it like from an academic perspective, which necessarily doesn't deal with canon. Okay, Marvel movies, for all it's worth, is its own different canon from Marvel Comics. They will adopt some stories, but they will do things differently. Like Ultron is created by Tony Stark instead of Hank Pym. You will have that in Infinity War. It's sorry, in Civil War. Um, Even though it takes some aspects of the the Superhero Registration Act, okay, you see that it's that basically, oh, it's not the same. You know, they're not. Nobody's concerned about Bucky in the comic version, but here Bucky is a main point. Winter Soldier is an important point, and um, T'Challa is just getting introduced to the Avengers. But I still think Civil War was a great movie. Even before the MCU became its place, we look at the X-Men series. Like almost nothing about it was following comic canon. It did its own thing. It was its own film universe. So people just ask questions about that. X questions answered by new media. This is like looking for Easter eggs and stuff like that. That's not necessarily picking apart canon as well. And then I've already gone into depth about Star Wars, where in a very strict universe, canon does matter. But even then, when somebody looks at a new Star Wars film, they they see that they 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 feel it's always about how they feel about it, not about whether it adheres to canon first and foremost. Even though that's an important part of it. I mean, look at the Revenge of for the prequels. Now, I love the prequels, and Anomaly Inc. fellow prequel lover, respect him a lot. He knows what I'm talking about. He probably knows what I'm talking about. Like the canon itself is important, but the prequels don't really mess with the canon. But the reason why you have some prequel haters is that people talk about, oh, the acting. Oh, the Jedi are too acrobatic with their lightsabers. Oh, there's too much politics in the prequels. Oh, George Lucas didn't direct well. Oh, the dialogue is flat. You rarely hear anything about the canon. People are hitting the prequels um, because of those facts that they feel. Now, I think there's some legitimacy in that. I think that there isn't legitimacy in some things. That could be a video for another time. But that's pretty much it. And then the author does this again, where he's consistently. I don't know whether he, as he was writing this, that he felt that what even I can't defend my main point, my main thesis of this argument. And before someone accuses me of throwing stones from glass houses, yes, ION totally does this too. Like I said, discussing canon can be fun, and it can add a lot to the series. Wonderful. Why are you writing this? But we get to the main crux. It's the toxic fandom. It's always the toxic fandom. But this craving for it above else is a toxic attitude. I'm not saying that this word toxic is a buzzword. I'm saying that, oh, if it's toxic, it's wrong think. Fans can't think like this because it's mean, and I'd rather have it feel. Not just the way we talk about a piece of media from a critical perspective, but in fan circles as well. Once again, the toxic fandom. The hunger for facts above all else leads to things like filler episodes becoming a derogatory term for stories that don't advance the larger ongoing plot of a narrative or don't include some shocking revelation that some can add to the list. Now, here's another point where I'll say, you know what, I can get it, but it's for a very minute, small type of thing. Filler episodes, in my opinion, have never really gotten a negative connotation except for one property, and that's Dragon Ball Z. And there's some filler episodes that I think actually fit very neatly into the canon of Dragon Ball Z. But when you look at stuff like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, stuff like Thundercats or other Transformers or anything like that, you rarely see anything with filler episodes. Every episode kind of involves itself um, into into the story's canon. You will have episodes that say, "Oh, this is a special," and they'll say, "This is a special," specifically a special. I think that Gundam does this very well. They have they decided to say that okay, there's so many stories you could tell with Gundam. Granted, so we'll have different centuries. Universal century, chaotic century, after war, after war century. There's so many there's so many centuries. It's even making me want to get back into the Gundam. But after watching Gundam, what Gundam does is that we'll create many canons over this 4-decade-old project that has been done, and people basically look to the main canon as the universal century with Amuro, Char, Aznavour, the new types, and many other things. But the creator of Gundam realized, you know what? I can tell different stories without, wrecking the canon. So here's what I can do. I will make other centuries within it. That each century will have their own canon. Canon to this. And you see, Gundam is very popular because it foremost puts its storytelling first, but decides to say let's place it in a different century, in a different setting. And you know what? That's an example of non-canon filler episodes, as this author would like to say, being almost as compelling as the main storyline. But no, it's toxic. Here's another one. It predicates the gatekeeping act of being a fan that is built on how much you know about a thing over whether you actually enjoy it or not. Now, here's the thing. I love Star Wars. But before I turned 18, or let me just say 18, before I was 18, I was a casual watcher. I liked the prequels. I saw Star Wars Revenge of the Sith in theaters in 2005 when I was a kid. I really liked it, but I wouldn't say I was a Star Wars fan. I just liked it. So I never really got into the actual thing. But then I thought that, you know what? Let me get into Star Wars. I really like it. So I started reading the books. I started watching the movies, all of them, watched 1 through 6, watched the Clone Wars, read the books that I thought were good, watched videos about Star Wars. I learned about the expanded universe and everything like that. And I think gatekeeping is very important because if I'm interested in something, I like to educate myself on everything, on anything and everything, so that I can really discuss with like-minded people properly about the property, about the story, about what we're watching. You can't just walk into somewhere and say, "Oh, I feel good about this," and I watched one Star Wars movie, so I know about Star Wars, and I don't think that all of this gatekeeping is good. And then somebody say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! Watching Star Wars is not just about the movies. There are other things too about it." And this is something that you should learn about. But no, people saying, "Oh, it's gatekeeping. It sucks." And and we can see what it's caused. Like once again, going back to Doctor Who, um, we can see I've seen what's happened with the fandom, and because of not creating, you've had people who are just casual fans walking in, and me, I have never watched Doctor Who. I've never watched an episode of Doctor Who. But if I go ahead and watch, say, the last season or a couple of episodes of the last season of this new Doctor Who, that does not predicate me the actual experience of talking about it on an educated level. Like the fans who might not like the new Doctor who have been watching it for, decades and who are really hardcore fans, are not telling me I can't like these episodes of Doctor Who. Because, hey, at the end of the day, it's my opinion and they can't change it. And, they might make some videos about it, but at the end of the day, they're not stopping me from liking a piece of media, as this author seems to think that gatekeeping does. But if I really want to talk about it, I have no footing to talk about it because my only connection to it is basically the last season of Doctor Who. And people who do keep up with it, like Clownfish and Nerdrotic, and a couple of other very passionate Doctor Who fans, would agree with you that, hey, you can like it, but if you want to talk about it in depth, you best up your game. You best get yourself educated. And it's because of this lack of, if anybody can talk about it. You've got people who don't care about the IP. Look at Ryan Johnson with The Last Jedi. We're finding out that he didn't. We already knew he didn't respect the property that he was given to direct the film, but he wasn't doing edits. He wasn't doing this. He wasn't doing that. Look at Thundercats Roar. Somebody who wasn't really into the Thundercat series. It's now a very annoying parody. Same thing with She-Ra. I've never watched She-Ra, but from what I get, people don't like the fact that you are going ahead and not following, the advice of old school fans. And sometimes you can't really bank on the excuse, well, it wasn't made for you. Not true. If you start creating art like that, then you risk alienating people worse than what you perceive gatekeeping to be doing. It's an attitude that turns and feeds the equally unruly, constantly growing spoiler culture. You don't need to be into canon to be into spoiler culture. Clearly, casual fans can spoil things as well too. Nothing is no type of. It's all open. So, yeah, the need robs discussions about the stories that we get nuance and interpretation. Because who cares what you think happened when there's an answer from the Word of God to that question you might have had? No, this is incorrect. Canon or caring about canon does not in any way stop you from having nuance and interpretation of stories. It doesn't at all. Being into canon is not exclusively being against nuance and interpretation of the story. That is lazy on this author's part, and it's very disingenuous. And I like to think that he knows that because he keeps disregarding his argument in the earlier paragraphs. And here we go. And more sinisterly, beyond the way it shapes our discourse, it's a craving that further enmeshes our love of a world, not the world itself, but to the masters behind it. No, it's about respecting the people who created what we love, a thing that we love. People thank George Lucas and admire the canon that he's created because it's a very good story. Same thing with Bradbury and Star Trek, and the creators of Doctor Who, and the creators of Transformers, and the creators of the Dakotaverse, and the creators of the Marvel Universe and the DC Universe. No, we already love this world, and we love the stories that are told in this world. Nothing stops people who are not interested in canon educating yourself to do what you need to do. It's disingenuous to a great degree. To a twist, a lit crit turn of the phrase, there cannot be the death of an author if the author gets their own fandom wiki. Oh my goodness. People create wikis almost as a pseudo forum of just explaining the story and just providing information. Like their Wikipedia's directly fashioned for the property or the world that people want to know about. Why go onto Wikipedia, normal Wikipedia, when you can get more in-depth view on a fandom Wikipedia? And this has nothing to do with canon. So it's fine if you want something to matter to a world and the characters you care about it, but it shouldn't be the all and all be all end all of your investment in them either. I don't think you get this, that nobody is saying that if you follow people who follow Canon, that's not what they base their love for the IP for. Me, I like Star Wars because I like the fights, I like the story, I like the characters. Canon comes secondary. And that's why I think fandom is such a wide shareable passion, full of different opinions and interpretations about a thing, united by shared vested interest and the love for storytelling. Oh my gosh, then why do you have a problem with people who value canon? You can have all of these things if people like the canon. You know how many people like the canon but have different opinions about the about what they like about Star Wars or Star Trek or any type of different property they like. I don't get this author at all. It's like valuing the sterile facts of those stories more than the things about them that make us think or feel is a sad thing indeed. My guy, you don't get it. Once again, people have feelings about what they love. They do not base it off of whether it is in canon or not. My gosh. My gosh. Terrible. But that's what I can say. And this picture of the High Inquisitor just tossing what is essentially Star Wars canon out the window. What more do you need? What more do you need? So this is my rant opposing your rant, Mr. James Westbrook. Please. So thank y'all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, hit the notifications, hit the bell of those notifications to make sure you're notified. I do these videos for you, the people, because I want to discuss good work and get your views on them. Thank y'all for watching. Please comment. I'd like to get your views on this particular subject as well, because I'm interested. Do you think I have a point? Where do you think I'm lacking? Let me get what y'all about. Thank y'all for watching. Hope to have more videos up later today. Peace. Or when I can. Peace.